Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed. Thank you for joining me. We are reading Plato's Phaedo, and we are on a quest to discover philosophy and answer the questions that are answered through philosophy, like what is our purpose? What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Where are we going? What is the soul? And in particular for today, what happens to the soul when we die? Should we fear death? Also, particular for today, can we trust our own thinking? Can we trust reasoning? Can we trust the logos? What is the logos is one of our questions, but can we trust it? Can we trust our thinking? Can we trust our mind? And can we trust ourselves? This is big, because even if we do find answers to these questions about reality, destiny, the meaning of life, where we go when we die, we could have a counterattack. In fact, that's part of being human, is the counterattack to our truth and learning. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we were stupid. Maybe whoever it was that called me dumb when I was younger was right. And I can't trust myself. This is important. And that's what we're examining today and reflecting on and understanding. Purifying ourselves from those sorts of doubts and fears. That's part of philosophy, as Socrates is laying out for us. So, we are, of course, reading the Phaedo, which is Socrates' last day, and he's outlining his doctrine of what it means, what philosophy is, what it means to live properly, correctly. Notice it's not just live well, but correctly, as though we have a purpose. There is a significance to living in the right way, both in this life with how we function towards ourselves and others in vice or virtue, but also for our incarnations, where we're going to go after this world. Now, in this channel, we often reflect on the same ideas over and over and over again, but each time we do, we see it in a more clear way. We purify our false beliefs through this kind of repetition, through this practice, through this discipline. It's a kind of habit, it's a kind of training. You don't go to the gym once and all of a sudden you're big and buff. You have to go every day, you have to repeat it. And the changes are subtle, but over time they build up. Like any training in this physical world. My friend Jacob from the All About Platonism read-along group talks about there being a lag. There's a lag here. There isn't an immediate effect of your actions and your thinking, whereas in the metaphysical world, if it's outside of time, it might be immediate. Your fears are immediate. This consequence of your doubts and your fears affect you immediately. Your state of mind, what you're like, affects the level of reality that you're at immediately. Whereas here we have some time, there's some lag, which is good because it allows us to learn. It's bad in that there seems to be a big delay between unjust actions and the kinds of remedies or requitals or justice in response to it from the universe. So we repeat the same ideas, we repeat the same questions, we hold on to the same questions, which is like a mantra. If you like a sports game, you don't just play it once, you might play it every weekend. And you might practice a few times, maybe play it a few other times during the week. That's like philosophy. But each time we play, we get stronger, we get a little bit stronger, we see a little bit more clearly. So the big questions we've had all through this channel: what is philosophy and what isn't philosophy? What's the significance of philosophy? How do we benefit philosophy? And what's our purpose? We are refining our ability to answer those questions. In the last few episodes, we saw following the logos was part of it. Watching the logos was part of it. We've been seeing in this text that it's all to do with being. Dianoia Dianoia is a word that brings together, unifies into a single word a lot of these particulars that we're seeing more about the logos, we're seeing more about the dialectic, we're seeing more about being. So each time we use those words, we see it a little bit more clearly. We're increasing the amount of weight we can lift with our muscles. And we have a new word, dianoia, that we've been using more recently. More recently, which unifies those terms. The more we see about the logos, the more we see about the dialectic, more we see about having our focus on being, the deeper and stronger and clearer we see this word dianoia. And that's one of the distinguishing words, one of the key words that distinguishes philosophy from what it's not, from the scammers, the con artists. Whether they're aware of it or not, a lot of people are aware that they're con artists, but some people just don't. But they claim to be philosophers. They claim to be selling alpha life coaching or something of that nature. But they are lying, or thumbs up, or they are not understanding yet. They haven't yet awoken true philosophy. They're not in the logos. And therefore, they haven't recognized that what they're doing is not dianoia, and instead the love of opinions. Opinions of the physical world that come from being associated with, are connected with, ruled by your physical senses. That's important. And of course, the being enslaved and ruled by your physical senses, Socrates is helping us see as the cause of our conflict and our problems. And instead, we need to be focused on being, where it isn't a competitive game. It isn't about abusing and holding down your fellow man, debating against them, making them look stupid or feel stupid. It's about dialectic, moving together cooperatively through understanding, because understanding doesn't pick teams. Understanding is universal. But we're human, so we also have state of mind. We're not neglecting our feelings. So often people, if there are facts that they like, they say facts don't care about your feelings. And if they don't like the facts, and then they say, well, I feel this is true, and feelings are more important. But both can be approached with excellence. Your state of mind is a result from your understanding. And of course, your understanding, so long as it's dianoia, can lead to the higher states of mind. Those related to being or in being, beauty, justice, goodness, bliss, eternity, immortality, purity, unity, oneness. These are all self-er terms that refer to being. So our leveling up is not just in our words, in our language, in our understanding, in our dianoia. It also has effect on our state of consciousness, our feeling state, our states of mind. And it opens us up to higher experiences, levels, dimensions of states of mind. Of course, we're interested in the dimension of being in particular in philosophy. And that's where Socrates is going. And he's encouraging us to race to meet him there. Now, how do we go through this? If philosophy is about dianoia, following the logos, so we can level up our thinking and seeing, as well as our state of mind, making it balloons, making it the actual spiritual discipline, game. Many other staff bearers, few are the actual mystics. That's to do with the states of mind, levels of experience of enlightenment. Of course, we're not just interested in experiencing them in philosophy, we're interested in integrating them. That's the significance of having understanding as our method, having the logos as our method. You can recognize it when you're there, And of course, belief, if you have beliefs about experience, you might not be able to recognize it, see the particulars, see how the parts function. You just have a belief about it. Just like if you have a belief that your toaster uses electricity to work, once you get inside it, because maybe you want to understand or experience the toaster more deeply, fix the broken toaster, upgrade your toaster maybe, you open up the case, because you just have beliefs, you don't recognize how the components fit together. What are the particular parts? How do they relate together? How do they function as a whole? So you can't go into it more deeply and use it more deeply. So this is the limit of belief, but because we're using understanding, we're not limited in that way. We can recognize that which is important through our understanding. We can go into it deeper. We can use it. We can utilize it. And of course, because we're practicing this at all times, we're talking about repeating it, seeing it more clearly, talking about it, using our philosophical understanding in all of our functions and relations. That's the virtues. So because we are bringing the virtues with us, we are integrating it into our being. So it's not a one-off enlightenment experience like that which is associated to most spiritual traditions. It's a kind of integration or permanence or assimilation to those states of being. And of course, because understanding is our method, we can also recognize when we fall, the counterattacks, or our problems seeping in, the shadow of the dialectic. Again, this only exists in spiritual traditions that follow the logos, because the logos is the understanding and the structure, the dialectic, of how our problems work. So you're not just understanding those high enlightenment experiences, you're understanding the problems. Famously, there are people who have had enlightenment experiences that just get more power to play out their problems. We see them as archetypes. The Catholic Church, maybe they have spiritual experiences within their clergy, but famously their problems play out sexually. The pervy sage is an archetype in Asian literature and anime. Goku in Dragon Ball Z has a pervy sage. Naruto has a pervy sage teacher. He's reached levels of enlightenment, but he hasn't been able to address his problems. The drunken master, another archetype, the the guru who's had an enlightenment experience or two with the alcohol, being drunk. That's an archetype as well. So, not only does it allow for, and by the way, if understanding is the method, you're likely going to hit or recognize or experience, but at least recognize all of the different stages. A Buddhist and a Taoist pass each other on a path, and they don't recognize each other. Why? Because they might be interested in one particular level of state of mind, but might not have recognized and understood the other ones that their friend, the man passing them, happens to be on. So all of these reasons we recognize and reflect on and understand and bring with us to understand ourselves inside the toaster of the comment, true philosophy is the true mystical tradition. Socrates said it, but why? We don't want to just be content with believing Socrates when he says that the true mystical tradition is those who practice philosophy correctly. We want to understand why. And you can only do that by bringing with you your understanding of the logos. All of those things that we talked about. Levels. Recognizing when you may fall down. Recognizing the next step you're not on through understanding, not through experience. You can't experience the next stage when you're not there yet. but you can understand it. Understanding your problems. Understanding or dianoia is what fuels the virtues. You're not mastering your desires to pursue another bodily desire. We talk about mastering your drinking problem to become a better gambler or something like that. No. We master our desires so we desire dianoia. We use dianoia in our planning for wisdom. We hold on to what dianoia shows as the truth, tells us that is the truth in courage. We desire that with our temperance. So it's what's needed for our virtues, so that when we reach them, we can integrate it into our way of being. And by the way, with the self-logos, which of course follows the pattern of the dialectic, we can use it to benefit our fellow man. We don't debate them, or just when they come to us with a question about something significant, what is reality, what is self, what is the meaning of life, we don't say, sit on a cushion you must. Or we don't say to them, too much do you think? We don't say that, you're thinking too much, or just shut up, or stop asking questions, or count your breaths and be quiet. These are the sorts of things a tyrant might say, to give the impression or the illusion of knowing by silencing conversation. Like we see on the news, when it's something important issue, someone in authority will use that kind of language to stop the conversation, avoid the question. Weasel words, we call them. Whataboutisms, ad hominem personal attacks. These are all ways of distracting from your question because they can't answer it. Because they're not actually wise. They're giving the impression of wisdom. They want to feel like they're the knower, like they're justified. So for all of these reasons, we can see why philosophy is the true and complete mystical tradition. Not because we like it, because it's we do like it, but because in principle, it has to be that way. And the dialectic allows you to, not use the weasel words, I almost dropped that point, but to ask questions to bring somebody to realize themselves. And that's the logos of learning as remembering, which was one of the things we've been reading that show that the soul must be immortal. Because when someone this was Cebes pointing out, referring to Socrates, when somebody has this art of dialectic, they can ask questions using their knowledge and judge answers, guide the conversation, and draw out through questions the knowledge the person had themselves. Thumbs up. Encouraging. And we're seeing Socrates encouraging questions. He's just made the same point 4 times. And he said, hey, even though this is my last day, let's have more questions. Surely you've got some objections. Let's bring them out. The very opposite from gurus who silence questions or make all these elaborate rules. Only under these conditions can you ask me a question. Socrates saying, no, all the time. Let's go. Let's hear it. Let's see what the logos from the self unfolds for us in reference to your question. It's probably going to be the self-logos. It's probably going to follow the structure of dialectic. And it's probably going to be about being. But it probably will answer our question too. Let's risk it. He risks it. The opposite to our normal priests who say, oh, just shut up and have faith. No questions here. The devil made a hell for people like you who ask these questions. That's a famous saying from someone. I remember who. So it's the opposite of those things that silence the logos. And of course, the implications of that is if we adopt this way of being, we will be able to learn what we need to level up, become better. Better than these people who have had enlightenment experiences but still have problems. Better than these people who haven't had anything but want to claim to be knowers because they will like the authority or they like the money. Better. They will say, oh, it's rude to say there's such a thing as better and worse. Arrogant. How arrogant of you. Bullshit. It's the truth. Literally, there is a ladder of development. In fact, it's important to recognize that because con artists give the shadow, a fake ladder. Oh, you are better because you're white, or because you're from this country, or because you're in my religion. You're naturally better without having to learn anything. It's a way of convincing people to remain ignorant so they can be manipulated. So we need to recognize there is a ladder of what makes someone better. And you learn that in philosophy. The ladder of how to make better your states of mind, your purification from your problems, and your perfection in your understanding. And how you can function with that is the dialectic. To be better as a helper or to provide the greatest benefit. The archetype of art. If art is using your knowledge to benefit your subject, then we can say that, well, if this is what is the highest benefit in this life and the next, then philosophy is the archetype for art. As a musician, it's very clear to me. I've just finished some studies in music, and very obvious to see. If people are just studying music, their problems are not addressed, and they will have problems. Repeated. Limiting them from achieving their goals in music. Equally so, if people are just studying music without dianoia, they're not applying music to their highest goals. How can they use their understanding of the terms, the orders, the principles in music to better understand the terms, the orders, the principles of their soul, of reality, of enlightenment? They're missing out. And it's especially important in art because when you start sharing your art, people want to hear the meaning of your art. You have to talk about it in your galleries. You have to have a meaning behind your music. People will want to ask you questions after the show or after the gallery. There needs to be a meaning. Well, if you've been learning just the paradigm of painting or just the paradigm of music, and you are missing out the paradigm of self in philosophy, self-er terms, self-being, self-mind, self-logos, and the one self, then you're missing out on learning about what's most meaningful. You won't have the content. You'll have the skill, but not the content. You can communicate your messages, but you won't have a good message. So you're missing out. You're missing out on your own learning and development, and you're missing out on a potential of sharing a good message when you are showing your art. This is the significance. And all of this we're seeing step by step, incrementally over the series, over the podcast series. And the more texts we read, the more connections we make, the more clear it's going to be, and the better we are able to function with it and integrate it. And recognize the greater states of mind that might come to us in dreams, in meditation, just in your day. Recognize it and go deeper into it. Ask the questions when you're there. Separate from your soul, as we're learning about in the Phaedo. And then outside of the body, what are you going to do? Keep doing this, asking the questions. Why? Because it's your way of being. You've been doing it at all times because you've seen the benefit you get from it in upgrading your seeing, recognizing your state of mind, removing your problems, escaping your fate, tapping into providence. If the self-logos unfolds a benefit itself, if the self-logos represents the art, then where does it come from? Must be the greatest artist. Tapping into that benefit so you can be guided towards your highest purpose, meaning of life, or destiny, is tapping into providence. So you're seeing all of the benefits that can come, and that's just side A. Also side B, you're recognizing all of the problems that happen if you don't have it. You can see the con artist conning you when he says, "I just believe in me, have hope." And well, actually, I like understanding. You're conning people and you're harming them because belief isn't what people really need or actually want, because everything we seek is in being and it's the unopinable. It's beyond the reach of belief. Without understanding, you won't be able to do all those things we mentioned. So by recognizing what it is, we're also able to recognize what it's not. We do both. That's the dialectic. Just like a doctor has to recognize the healthy body and also understand about the kinds of illnesses you can have. So it's the like the doctor's art, but it's the art of the self. Highest art. That should inform the other arts, by the way, as we're seeing. Exciting. Fun. I hope you're enjoying this journey with me. Now, in the text, Socrates, so we're in the Phaedo. We're about 89-ish, I think. Yep, about 50, page 53. Top of page 53 if you're following along the text. By the way, you can find the text, should be a link below. You can join live on Twitch. These are all recorded on Twitch live, so you can join there. Should be a link below. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel and you can watch them as they get released. And hopefully soon there'll be a Patreon channel for those who want some extra benefits or just want to see some benefit in this channel sustaining itself and this message being spread for as long as we are able to do so. Possible benefits for those who want to support on Patreon: access to the notes that we make, early access to the videos, the audio versions. I will probably when I figure out how Patreon works, figure out a way of sharing the audio. Also, watch-alongs for other philosophers, so we can apply our understanding of the dialectic that we're learning to making sense of other popular philosophers or other great philosophers, like the great Dr. Pierre Grimes, of course, who had a very advanced mastery of the self-logos himself. And dream analysis. The application of this dialectic to understanding the messages of our dreams, which makes it personal. Just like there is a logos in the Phaedo that we're unpacking and seeing through the dianoia, through the self-logos and dialectic, so too is there one directed to you personally in your dreams, highlighting both. Or all three, let's say, the triad. The ladder up, its shadow, and your hobby or your art that you're learning. The way that you're mythologizing your art. So for me, it's music, but it will also tell you about the self-logos and also the false logos, your pathologos. So that's if there's an interest shown for people who want to engage in that, of course, you have to be open to the challenge because it's the best thing you can do, but it's also the most challenging. Of course it is. If you want to reach a higher level in video game, you have to defeat the more powerful bosses. So that's an option for Patreon that you might find below. Now in the text, where are we at? Well, we've got the doctrine of philosophy. It's very closely tied to the art and practice of death and dying. So it's the yoga of separating the soul from the body. But of course, the virtues are there, and that's very important. And dianoia is there. And we've been seeing why that's important. Of course, for that to be the case, Simmias, so we've got Simmias and Cebes, two friends of Socrates who are hearing this, kind of our surrogates stepping in for us to ask the questions that we would have probably asked if we were there. For that to be the case, the soul must have an existence out of the body. And balloons. So, that was the next part, to show that the soul must be immortal, engage in a cyclical process of reincarnation, and Also, then we had, oh, by the way, another thing that proves that our soul existed before we were born is that we learn through remembering everything we learn about. There's a lot of arguments to show that before we even learn it, we can recognize it, like beauty or equality. And of course, those are things that are invisible. So how do we know them? We didn't learn them here because we can't see them with our physical senses. So where do we get the idea of beauty, of justice, of equality? So we must have already seen this hyparxis of all of those ideas. Hyparxis, the top of the pyramid, where it all comes together, the fullest flowering, self-ousia, being itself, where our souls must have been united with it. So there must be, therefore, a hyparxis of a single soul, the soul, not a soul that is in your body or my body, but the soul. So the doctrine of philosophy, the immortality of the soul, and balloons, and learning as remembering. Of course, CB's like, okay, I like that, but can you sing me a song to free me from my childhood fear of the boogeyman, my childhood fear of death? I'm with you that we must have existed before we were born, but what about after? How come our soul doesn't flitter away to the wind when we die? And we talked about, well, to understand that, we have to understand being. Is the soul more like being, not made of parts, pure, uniform, incomposite, or is it like the body, composite, made of composite parts? And therefore the body scatters, decays. Which is our soul more like? If it's more like being, which of course it is, you can't see it, it's invisible, it's more pure, it's more divine, it's of a higher significance, therefore it would probably last after we die. So those are the four parts. But then Socrates has said, come on, surely you have some more objections. They were like, Carl, we don't want to bother you on your last day. Come on, says Socrates. So, swans sing the greatest, most beautiful songs when they're about to die. So too I am. So bring it on. So he loves to play the game. And he's watching, he watches and reflects the logos himself. He's not taking ownership. These are not Socrates' arguments. You're missing the entire point. If there's just the soul, if there's just the philosophy, not a philosophy, but the philosophy and the soul and the truth, then it's not a personal thing. Of course, every now and again we get people who are unfamiliar with this, who have been taught this is what philosophy is. It's only the physical world. And I'll say, well, what's your philosophy? Or what's your opinion of this person? Or what's your belief? Or what about Hegel? What about Kant? And we have to take the time and the patience and be encouraging and inviting and say, well, actually, this is a different game. This isn't the Latin tradition of many, in the physical world following the tradition of Aristotle, but it's the Socratic in the world of being, the tradition of Socrates, the Greek tradition with the. So it's the versus a, being versus becoming, metaphysical versus the physical. So someone will say, oh, you're just repeating what Socrates said. Well, good. That's funny to us if we can recognize the differences. To them, it'll be like, oh, no, you're supposed to make your own opinions. Cobble together the opinions of Kant and Hegel and make something new and really advertise it and market it. Convince people it's the opinion that's the good one. And so if you're just repeating someone else, well, of course, we're not just repeating. We start with learning and trusting and believing through a love of learning, but then we have to upgrade it to wisdom, the virtue of wisdom, philomathesis into philosophia, meaning we have to be developing our dianoia to make it the virtue of wisdom, like any of the virtues. So we will point out, oh, by the way, do you think 1 and 1 is 2? You're just repeating the Cookie Monster. You'll know wiser than the Cookie Monster, because he says one cookie and two cookies is one cookie and another cookie makes two cookies. Doesn't make sense. It's the wrong kind of question. It's a personal question. Socrates is not claiming the logos. It's not personal. Of course, if we recognize that, we can recognize side B. What isn't philosophy? What's the cause of war and conflict? What's the cause of disharmony? What's the cause of oppression? What's the cause of how does debate function? By making it personal. We can ignore the truth because you suck. Because one eye is bigger than the other. Because your nose is too big. Because you walk funny. What the hell? That's got nothing to do with anything. But that doesn't matter. It's losing the logos through a tangent. The implied principles is that it's personal. But it ain't personal. Nothing to do with people. Because there is the soul. The hyparxis of all of the individual souls. There's the self. You don't own the self. If it's just if all is self, from self, returning to self, in self, then isn't it just the same self? Isn't it just one self? In a similar way, right? So this is key, right? Because making it personal is the Latin tradition, the counterattack to truth played out through history. That's where we are at now. We have to recognize where we're at, where we're stuck. This is where we're stuck. And this is where we're at in the logos. We're verging on the level of learning. That's where we're at. We're not into the logos yet in society. We are in this channel, of course. We've been doing it for a while. But society, we're not at logos yet. We're just before it. We're still at group thinking. Inside cave good, outside cave scary bad, attack, violence, debate, criticize, make it personal, and so on. That's where we're at. It's also where we're stuck. Where we're stuck, Aristotle's issue. The Latin problem. The many, the world of becoming. Right before the logos, which is a very, dramatic, tumultuous point of history, because we are at a level of development where we can play out our problems with huge, catastrophic, race-ending effects, humanity-destroying effects. But because we have not yet awakened philosophy, reawakened the logos, we do not have what we need to solve problems that can be played out in that way. We lack the logos. And we also lack the way of understanding and unifying all understanding and spiritual traditions. Reaching that hyparxis, realizing that we're not against each other, fighting each other, rich versus poor, your country versus my country, and so on and so on. Bullcrap. We are the same soul, and you can only recognize we are the same soul and the same self with the same destiny if you awaken philosophy. Because it's through the logos that we are seeing these arguments. It's through the dialectic that we're sharing them with each other. It's through the experience of being that we can verify these for ourselves. Through our own experience, not through believing some fast-talking con artist. In the many different forms they take. It's the logos that solves problems, that can unify, that can show us that there is a hyparxis and give us the path to walk to reach there. And that's what we trust. That's what we follow. We follow the logos. We risk it. Every day we risk it. Every day we have a choice to go back to what's familiar and comfortable. The louder, the negative daemon, the voice of our past. Oh, this is our traditions. This is my prejudices. This is what we used to. You know, people treat you a bit nicer if you put yourself down. People will befriend you if you abuse those which are different. People find you more tolerable if you don't ask meaningful questions. That kind of crap doesn't lead you anywhere. Perpetuates your problems and nurtures your soul in a kind of way that's going to affect your incarnations negatively. You're going to come back as a donkey. And every time I mention coming back as a donkey, I make this noise, which is the noise that a donkey from with a cold would make. Donkey. So, but we don't go with what's comfortable. That's vice. We practice virtue. We risk it. We risk the logos. We risk trusting everything we've built up. And of course, the more we do this podcast, the more we read this text, the more we reflect with each other, the more reasons we have to trust the logos. Every moment we trust the logos. Hey, every activity is some sort of outward movement. What are you going to do? You're going to go halfway and do something that might make you good enough to one day do philosophy, or you're going to jump in and do it. Every activity is there is a kind of attention on a goal. It's a goal you think is good. You try and participate in it the best. You have to use your highest vision and your understanding. All of these things are qualities applied to an activity that's not quite there. At best, it's a pseudo activity. Everything. Unless it's the real activity. Do you want to risk it? Are you good enough to play? Of course you are. You always are. Wherever you are. Which is actually talking about goats. Actually, this isn't a goat. This is a goat here. No, that's the cat. See, that's the sound of a goat. It's different from the donkey. It's an elephant. But there's Dr. Grimes would have a saying, a baby goat has everything it needs for the excellence of being a goat. You have everything you need for the excellence of being a human right now. You can play the game right now. You're constantly being communicated to. You have the voice of the negative daemon saying don't play, and you have the quieter voice of the self encouraging you to play. That's philosophy. Of course, likewise for our problems, people would often say to people, well, if we have a reincarnation, don't we have to go back into our past lives to philosophically midwife or purify our ignorance, our problems from past lives? Because even Socrates says the way you nurture your soul affects how your soul reincarnates. We come to this planet with certain false beliefs that influence the kind of birth, the time of our birth, the country of our birth, the family of our birth. Even before we start to learn things, we have our own particular personality shaped in a certain sort of way, which is why siblings can experience the same conditions, but come away with a different pathologos, a different false idea of themselves, even if it's the same event. They have a way of making sense of things particular to their personality. Therefore, to purify ourselves completely, don't we have to go into our past lives? And the answer, of course, is the answer to do with goats. Baby goat has everything it needs right now to be the excellence of a goat. You have everything you need right now for your excellence. There's enough. You have enough to play philosophy. You have enough to solve your problems, even the problems that you've taken with you through many lifetimes, through many incarnations. And the more we do this, the more we play this game, the more we join each other together in this podcast, the more we share our thoughts in the various different ways we're learning to do it, the more we'll see why that's the case. So we upgrade a trust to understanding. But we still have to trust it. We still have to risk it. Of course, living your life the way of Socrates, he can obviously trust it to a very high level, which is why even now he's made his point 4 times. Well, his point first, but his point is so true that even in the other ways that he functions, definition and demonstration, even in his demonstration of the logos, of the dialectic, it's proving his point. To answer the questions he's been asked about the soul's immortality, about learning, about whether or not the soul flies away after our death, he's had to be doing the same thing, dianoia, showing his true demonstration, what he's defining to be true. So you can see why he trusts the logos so well, because he's probably lived his life this way. Equally so, in this level where we are in the text, he's doing it again. He's saying, hey, let's risk it. Not only let's risk it, does anybody else want to play? Because Simeon's like, oh, I don't want to bother you. No, come on, bother me. Let's go. It's not a bother. It's not a bother. It's singing the best song. In fact, if you can find an artist, a musician, a singer who can sing the song, that's the one you want to look to. If you want to spend money on anything, this is the best thing to spend your money on. Don't spare any expense. In fact, probably look amongst yourselves, because you're more likely going to find a singer who can sing the song that can sing away our fears and doubts about death. Like we are singing a child to sleep, removing his fear of the boogeyman. That's the metaphor he uses. That's the most important thing to do, and we should sing to self every day. That kind of a song. So he's comparing himself to the swans. He's singing the most beautifully, with an recognition of where they're going in the next place. So, Simi's like, okay, this is my concern. The physical body seems to be stronger and last longer, just like the physical body of a lyre lasts longer than the harmony you can make if the strings are all there and perfectly tuned and you play it. There have to be all these conditions to create harmony. But harmony is more divine. Harmony is invisible. Harmony seems to be incompetent, balloons. So the argument about the soul being more divine, not visible, incomposite, uniform, you could also apply to harmony, not just to the divine. That was your argument. The soul is more like those things, therefore more like the divine, therefore the soul is probably immortal like the divine. But harmony is like that. But harmony is the first thing to go. Harmony goes first, then the strings fall off, and then a long time after, the wood of the lyre will break down, decay. So what about that fear of the soul after we die? Even if I'm with you on, okay, we must have come from somewhere, and the theory of learning shows us this as well. So, but what about after this death? Socrates is risking it, trusting the logos, following the logos, and risking it even one more time. But how much does he risk it? How much does he trust the logos? He doesn't stop there. Come on. First of all, he says, does anybody else want to take the shot? Does anyone else, like, that's a pretty good argument. Does anybody else want to pick up the dialectic? Trust the logos from themselves. No one else did. So he said, okay, let's make it even more tricky. Anyone want to double team me? Hey, that's Simius's argument. Seabees, do you have one? Let's try and tackle both. Double team me here. That's how good a player he is, using sport ball as a metaphor. Seabees comes in and says, okay, I'm not with Simius. I don't think the body is stronger and therefore lasts longer. I think the soul is stronger. But maybe, like, think about somebody who weaves a coat and wears a coat. They might outlive many coats, showing that they are stronger than clothes, but they won't outlive the last coat they wear. So our body changes all the time as we grow, but maybe the last form our body is in lasts longer than our soul. Could be. In fact, we should be writing this down. And then he brings in another argument. So hey, that's my position. But here's a third. So we've got Simius's, we got this one, Cebes's, and we have a third. Even those people who think that reincarnation is a thing, they don't know whether this is their last reincarnation. Maybe all of our lives have an effect on our soul. The suffering that we go through wears us down until we don't know if this is our last reincarnation, so therefore we should be in fear of this, our death. So by bringing in two arguments, he's effectively triple teaming Socrates. It's quite a risk. Why? Because the people there were like, well, we were convinced. We followed the logos. We trusted the dialectic. We trusted philosophy. And that's what you got to do. You got to trust it. And we were convinced by our reasoning that the soul was immortal, but this triple team has convinced us otherwise. So we don't trust ourselves because we were the ones who judged that it was a good argument. So we must suck. We cannot trust ourselves. Not only that, this realm of being that gives us all of these ideas that we were using, maybe reality isn't to be trusted. If it can throw these lies at us, or it's not immortal, or rejects our soul after death. And not only that, third, our reasoning, the logos itself. I don't trust the logos anymore. This very thing that is philosophy, that provides us what we need, that makes philosophy, that we are saying is what we need to reach to uncover and solve our problems, the stage of development within ourselves and within humanity, discovering and reawakening the logos, they don't trust it anymore because of this triple team. They're throwing into doubt everything they learned before. So just hearing that, we recognize that's the big three. The self they don't trust, mind or reality they don't trust, and the logos they don't trust. Those are the big three. First, second, and third hypothesis on Parmenides, by the way, it's a little teaser for when we get back into the Parmenides. But we recognize self-logos directed towards being. But also, not only that, we have to recognize that all of the things we learn in being through the dialectic must be of the self. In fact, Parmenides pointed that out when we first learnt the dialectic, the first day of Socrates' philosophical journey. This is a quote from our series on the opening to Parmenides. We have a few quotes. This is the dialectic. Permit the ideas of the real beings to be. Keep your mind fixed on the objections or counterattacks. Define each of the ideas. That's dianoia. But you have to also allow the idea of each one of the real beings to be of the self. This is the power of dialectics. So, this is what we've been talking about by leveling up our seeing, leveling up our clarity, and being able to recognize things. So just hearing, let's jump into the text now, pick up where we left off. So their response: we are thrown into distrust of the logos, of us as worthless judges, and of the realities. We recognize a triad because we have been developing our triads. And this is the triad of self, the triad for the next stage of human evolution, the triad of the actual spiritual quest, spiritual tradition, the triad of actual learning, of actual philosophy, of what we should be learning at school. And if it's the spiritual quest, the academic quest, the evolutionary quest, then it's the paradigm. So everything. You're interested in law, that's what you want to be doing. You're interested in education, you're interested in justice system, you're interested in teaching music. These are the big three you're going to be using. So everything is thrown into question. Hugest stakes possible. This is what happens when you risk it. What are you doing, Socrates? You should have finished the text there. Should have had a nice beer and just laid down and waited to die. Right? Wrong. So we can see the implications. And now today we're going to see what's he going to say. Does Socrates recognize these three? Probably. Let's see. Before we do that, let's nail down the arguments that we have so far on the table. So let's call this a recap. So far we have the doctrine, or the defense, the doctrine of philosophy. Of course, we have the other elements involved in the narrative or the mythology to do with waiting at the gates, being allowed in to see Socrates, taking his chains off, being told about his dreams. My dreams were giving me messages. But in terms of sections, we've got the doctrine of philosophy, we got the arguments for immortality, of the soul, and there were 4 of them. And there were answering CBs. Answering CBs. He had the objection. And then Simmias asked for the arguments. By the way, one of those 4 was CBs. CBs had a go. He gave us the seemed really bright. He gave us the final argument for the soul must be immortal because of learning. Arguments for learning as recollection. And then that was in relation to answering. Move down a little bit. Answering Simmias. And then we have number 4. Simmias said, well, let's see if CB's is convinced. So we have arguments showing soul exists after death. And we talked about the not flying to the not scattering to the wind. This was the boogeyman. Answering CBs. It's interesting. We can see a pattern emerging, can't we? Simmias, CBs, Simmias, CBs. Interesting. And now we are at number 5, which is the objections. Objections. And there are 3. times 3. Triple team. Triple team is when in basketball or any sport, you have an attacker with the ball. Normally there's one defender, but his defender can call over a friend. So it's 2-on-1. That's called a double team. And then if another friend comes to help, let's say he's a really good player, so on the green team, it's like this. So everybody it's called marking. You're defending your man. But then this guy with the ball is so good that this guy comes to help. He's so dangerous. He's the best player. That's called double team. And if this guy comes to help, that's called a triple team. So there's a lot of pressure on this attacker now. He has to overcome 3 defenders. That's what triple team is. So that's where we are. But as a result of that, we are seeing there is a distrust, but a distrust in self, in reality, and in the logos. And of course, because of what we've been doing, we can recognize this as a triad. We've got lots of triads all over the board. That's a big one. Looking for some triangles. Here we go. Here we go. Here's one over here. One self, self logos, self being or mind or reality. So big stakes on the board. So this is like we're halfway through the text, and this is where the big boss villain shows his head, because this is the biggest thing that you can. In fact, it's the nature of the counterattack. It's the nature of our problems. Our problems stop us from reaching our highest goals because they say that our self is not good enough. Don't seek your own goals. That's selfish. That's bad. Be a slave to others. Reality is not good. You can't know reality. Shut up. Or reality is bad. You're black-pilled, they call it now. Or your logos, your ability to think and reason for yourself, to gain understanding is not good enough. You just have to give up or have belief or opinion or faith. So these are the things that will stop you in your progress to reach your meaning of life, the meaning of life. And so we can recognize that these are the stakes. The stakes are huge. So we'll say, oops. Say, oh my God. Huge stakes. This is a person like us looking at these stakes and going, oh my God, huge stakes. So here's a speech bubble. That's where we are right now. That's us.
Flippity jibbity nonsense. Come on, man.
What in the heck are we talking about here?
That's us. Okay, so let's jump in the text and see what happens next. Little sting. Okay, jumping back into the text. Okay, I don't know. I'll think of some, I'll find better stings. Okay, so here we are in the text. This is the conclusion we're on the top of page 50. That's 88A if you're reading along in another translation. 88A is the Stephanus numbers. It allows you to be at the right place in different translations. So, even if this is the double team, even if the soul is more powerful than the body, unlike Simmius's opinion, the self nature of the soul is strong to survive many births. Wait, this is incarnation. Let's go back a bit. The Weaver argument. The human genus, the human species, lasts longer than a garment, but perishes later. Okay, let's okay. Lasts longer. The garment is the less permanent thing. But on the other hand, he prior to the last garment, on account of a human being, is not more. Okay. Okay, worn out many garments prior to the last garment. So equivalent to the soul lasts longer because the body is weaker and less permanent. The soul wears out many bodies. Especially if living a long life, but not the last one. Okay, so you die wearing your last article of clothing. Even though you are stronger than the last article of clothing, that article of clothing will outlive you. So our soul is outlived by our body, even though the soul outlived many bodies. So we can see this is very similar to his next argument, the triple team, to with reincarnation. Just like our soul has outlived many garments, which is a metaphor for outliving many versions of this body, so too, if you believe in reincarnation, which he doesn't necessarily, he said that some people do, you might outlive many different bodies. And just like this garment argument, you won't outlive the last body. And so this destroyed by a certain one of her deaths. So he's saying, by the way, here's even a cause. Here's an argument that shows why. We are, you can be strong enough to survive many births by the self nature of the soul, but you can't agree that the self does not suffer by her many births, and therefore is finally destroyed. You're worn down by a certain one of the deaths, the final destruction. Therefore, conclusion, unless you can prove the soul has to be altogether deathless and indestructible, you must always be in constant fear of the soul of self, and that this present separation from the body will be her complete destruction. This was what follows. So it's kind of the same argument, whether it's a single incarnation or many. And of course, we see this with our problems too. We talk about reincarnating into a different kind of a person or animal based on our nurturing of the soul. But likewise with the virtues, you can be practicing your virtues, and he says, don't take a break, because that's self-imprisonment, the worst kind of imprisonment. You're like following the logos. Oh, but now I'm going to go get wasted because yay, pleasures. Well, hang on a second. No. You're just nurturing. You're nailing your soul back to your body. All that good work you've been doing, you're ruining it. nailing the soul to the body. So it's a kind of reincarnation back into your problems. We talked about today gurus. Yeah, you can have a enlightenment experience, but without philosophy, dianoia, recognizing the ladder and the shadow, you will reincarnate into your problem and get into a sex scandal, as many churches have gotten themselves into, or get into alcohol, or, I don't know, hit your students with a bamboo stick thinking it's good for them or something. Whatever your problem may be. I'm not entirely certain if... Yeah, I don't think that's good. Hitting people with sticks. So, reincarnating in each moment. Do I want to follow philosophy? Do I want to follow the Logos? Do I want to trust the Logos? Do I want to keep nurturing my soul in this lag, knowing that I might not receive the benefits for another few months, just like going to the gym, you keep doing it. But then we start noticing benefits. And the big benefit is in your incarnation, or when you can separate from the body and you can meet Socrates at the club. Enter the kind of philosophical conversation happening out of the body in the realm of being. Makes it a bit easier when you can get there, but for the time being, you've got to train. But then you might reincarnate into your problem. But if we are learning the Logos, you don't beat yourself up. You gather the terms, you look for the structure, you look for the sameness and themes. Ask the right kind of questions by yourself or with a friend. That's called philosophical midwifery. And you can find out why you fell, why you hit a block, why you went back into your problem. This is why philosophy is a complete spiritual practice and the new paradigm for psychotherapy. Where's my book? Don't have the book on the desk, but you can get Dr. Pierre Grimes' book, of philosophical midwifery. It's an orange book, and they call it the Orange Sutra. Even though it's the model for psychotherapy, it's also a spiritual text, so they call it a sutra. Because of this reason. So, whether it's reincarnating into our problems, even after enlightenment experiences, even after doing good work following the Logos, or reincarnating into a next life, as above, so below, it's the same principle. In fact, the closer you go to being, to that which is eternal outside of space and time, you might be able to realize that those incarnations happen every instant, like frames of a film strip. Each scene could be an incarnation. How do you want to incarnate into the next moment, to the next 32nd of a second? So this outliving the last garment applies in that sort of a way. In each moment, within your physical body, you outlive a garment because your body's always changing in each moment. Just like in reincarnation, you outlive a complete body, a whole lifetime, but not the last one. Not the last cloak, not the last form of this body, and not the last individual body in incarnation. So we've got a three-part analogy. A cloak is to this body, is to our many incarnations bodies. So, pretty good argument. Makes sense. And what happened? Having been convinced, okay, after hearing what they had said, we were all thoroughly distressed.
Wow. What?
And we told each other afterwards, for having been quite convinced by the previous Logos, they seemed to confuse us again, throw us into distrust. Okay, this is important. This is something that artists often talk about. Allowing yourself to be confused. Being puzzled. You don't know what's going to happen in the next show. You don't know what your insight's going to be. Learning Solving a mathematical equation, same thing. You don't know how to solve the equation yet, but you're okay with being confused because there is a certain amount of trust in the logos of your art, in your skill as a painter, in your skill as a musician, in your skill as a mathematician, or not just your own skill, the logos. If I'm allowing myself to be confused and I stay focused, I might get inspiration, artistically, musically, or in mathematics, solve a puzzle. Oh, I can get it now. Insight. But you can't get an insight unless you're confused. You can't answer a question unless you've got a question. You can't have a question unless you're puzzled. You can't be on a quest without a question. And you can't reach the goal without being on a quest. So being confused, being okay with being confused, even enjoying being confused. Pierre Grimes often, I can think his Facebook profile was a one wandering in wonder. Wondering, confused. And that can be uncomfortable. But can you be comfortable in being uncomfortable? Can you be used to being confused? Can you enjoy being puzzled? Socrates, he is watching and puzzling over the logos that unfolded from self, but there's a certain trust in it that he's willing to go again. Hey, not just me, anybody want to answer him. Who wants the ball? Okay, I've got the ball still. Okay, double team me. Oh, there's a triple team. Oh my God. And the game's on the line because they're in distrust of the logos, themselves, and reality. The whole game of reality, the whole game of philosophy, the whole game of humanity is on the line. Oh my God, who wants the ball being triple teamed with the game on the line? That's Michael Jordan stuff if you're into basketball. There must be a certain trust in the logos from self for inspiration. To share in it yourself with the skills that you've got. But I'm not good enough. Hey, not trusting yourself? You have what you need. It's not about being ideal or perfect. That doesn't happen in the realm of becoming. You have what you need right now for the excellence of being a goat. Interesting. Baby goat has what it needs for the excellence of a goat. And we just talked about Michael Jordan, who's considered the GOAT, the greatest of all time. So you have what you need to be the GOAT at each moment. But the interesting thing about playing, the more you play, the more you can trust the logos. And the more confused you are and open to it, and the more you trust it, the more you can share in the logos. But Socrates is saying, it's not from me. Anyone can play. I'm watching it too. Dr. Grimes in his many great talks on the PRS series. I was wondering how that would come together. Dream analysis, same sort of mentality. The dream unfolds the logos. We share in it. We try and match it. Same thing with going to a concert. As an audience member, you're not doing it, but you try and match it. You try and bring the level of integrity of the song, the level of focus that the artist has, the level of, it's three levels. The artist has the focus, the openness, the sharing in his highest vision and understanding to be as close to the divine, where music comes from, where the paradigm unfolds. Just like the logos, same paradigm. Socrates is matching it. His instructions to us is to match it. It is unlawful for the unpure to be with the pure. So you are purifying yourself so the divine self lets you in or invites you in or allows you to share in that higher level. It's through likeness. And he said, dianoia. Should have a quote of that, by the way. Dianoia is that principle. This one, I think, this quote. Self-justice, beauty, and good, the ousia of all the selves in being is contemplated, not through the body, but whosoever prepares themselves by most accurately dianoiaing each self, they will approach closest to being in nous. Now there's another quote that I have to find. Maybe this one. We'll be closest to knowing if we do not associate with the body more than is necessary. That's a purification. Liberated from the phronesis of the body. Okay, we shall know that is pure. Okay, there's another quote about this is the purification and we be with. Okay, I don't have the quote down, but I'll get it next time. Through likeness, through purifying ourselves. So the musician tries to match the divine through which music unfolds the paradigm, just like Socrates tries to match the daemon to be a good daemon, so he can match the daemon and reach there in the practice of philosophy separating from the body in this life through dianoia, which, by the way, if a daemon is functioning to benefit through the self-logos, he has to have the access to he has to share in the self-logos. He has to use the dialectic to get there. He doesn't tell you the answers. He asks you questions, balloons, and it's directed towards being for your benefit. So the daemon is the mastery of the dianoia too. But an audience member has to themselves be open, puzzled, focused, receptive, reflecting on the highest vision of the music, using their highest personal understanding that they're at. That's how the audience member shares in the beauty of the music that the musician is facilitating, just like we here have to be confused but trust the logos, so we can share in the divine logos that Socrates is being the musician. He keeps calling himself the greatest musician because philosophy is the greatest form of music. And facilitating from the divine, the logos of the self, watching the self logos. Like a daemon, from the daemon. So this is important. We have to be confused, but also trust in the logos. It has to be both. We don't want to do what he said is if you become a lover of the body and you're not nurturing yourself in the logos, then for not becoming familiar with the logos so that you can trust it, not understanding the logos so you know why you should trust it, not verifying your trust and understanding in nous by experiencing it, so therefore you're missing what you need to trust it better, then you can accustom yourself to hate. Accustom yourself to hate and fear and avoid that which is not able to be seen, dark and formless to the eyes, but is intelligible. Intelligible means understandable and knowable, experienceable. That's what intelligible means. And tangible. You can touch it. To philosophy. Only when you depart pure, self by self. So, your distrust, what was it? Distrust and hate. Learn to hate and avoid and fear. Right, the opposite of trust. Hate and fear and avoid up here. By thinking, beguiled by the physical body, the pleasures and desires of the body, to think nothing else is true other than the physical that you can touch, see, drink, eat, and use for sexual purposes. And thus training yourself to hate, fear, and avoid. And we can add, so in your dialectic of what happens if you don't be a philosopher, inside B, add these adjectives. Get out your pen, get out your notebook, get out your document or whatever you've got, or your notepad like the one I've got here, and say, like this, say, if philosophy exists, you got A, and then if it doesn't not exist, that's B. If it doesn't exist, what can you say about it? What can you say about how philosophy relates to you? How do you relate to others? And how do you relate back to philosophy? In this, you've got, you will hate philosophy. You will fear philosophy. You will avoid. And now, several pages later, we have distrust. This will happen for you, so O is you. So what can you say about philosophy that doesn't exist? It's illusion, it's opinions, it's Kant or Hegel or Aristotelian or anything like that. It's bollocks. How does it relate to you? I don't know. Gives you something to waste your time on. Gives you something to feel smarter than other people because you can use big words. You can quote old books. How do you relate to others? You can beat them in a debate. You can own them. You can destroy them in a debate with your big words. Okay, and then how do you relate back to philosophy? Hate, fear, and avoid and distrust. The logos. Nous and logos. That which is intelligible, which is both understandable and experienceable. Whereas over here, you'd have the opposite. If philosophy does exist, what can you say about it? How does it relate to you? How do you relate to other people? We could add dialectic. And the opposite over here, we have debate. And then how do you relate back to philosophy? One of the cool things is you can use this and ask the question, what would its opposite be? Could you come to hate, not hate, but love philosophy? Could you not fear it, but desire? Not avoid, but seek, or embrace. Not distrust, but trust. The nous and logos. How about that? And if, of course, nous and logos is vision and understanding, following the paradigm of the dialectic that applies to all arts, then wouldn't you want to love, desire, embrace, and trust the logos and vision, the skill and vision, the understanding and vision of whatever art you do, of music, of the muses, of your painting, of your screenwriting, of your comic book making, of your video game making, of anything you do, of your actual dialectic, you're talking with your friends, of dream analysis? Wouldn't you want to love, desire, embrace, trust the vision and the understanding of that vision that will unfold if you are open to it? It's not you doing it, sharing in it. You're not taking it part. You're not the creator of the logos, of the vision. I mean, in a higher sense, self is, but it's self that's doing it. These seem to be the conditions for inspiration and excellent functioning. Whereas if philosophy doesn't exist, you have debate, and of course all the other things that we have: war, discord, like disharmony, and all the other things that we saw from Discord, not the Discord channel that we have, but civil discord. Civil is the text. So make sure you got taking notes for your own leveling up, and you accept this quest. I hope you do. So they're in a bit of a pickle.
What in the heck are we talking about here?
They're in a bit of a pickle.
Flibbity jibbity nonsense.
That's what they think. What do they think of the logos?
Flibbity jibbity nonsense.
Yeah, you said it. Old man. What's your name? Barack Obama? Biden. Joey. By the gods. So this is our narrator. By the gods, O Plato. Plato, Phaedo is our narrator. He is explaining. Phaedo said, hey, by the way, they were thrown into distrust of the logos, of reality, and of themselves. And the person listening to the story, our friend Socrates, says, by the gods, O Plato, you have my sympathy indeed, for as I listen to you now, I also find myself find self saying such a thing to myself, what logos then can we still trust? So he's hearing it. Maybe we're hearing it and we have these doubts. Since the logos which Socrates produced was extremely convincing, but has now fallen into distrust with this triple team. Since the logos that the soul is a certain harmony of ours, has now and always had a hold of me in a wonderful way, and just as you mentioned it. It reminded me that myself had previously taken this for granted also. So the fears that Simmias has, and the mythology around understanding the soul is like a harmony. A friend from the chat mentioned it's emergentism. It's just if your body is in harmony, this thing emerges, but it's just chemicals really, and neurons firing. So it's kind of a harmony that results. That's a kind of mythology that we often get. And if you press that button, you can trigger the fear. And that's what con artists are trained to do, right? Trigger the fear, turn on any of these, mainstream news networks, and it's all fear, distrust. They know the buttons to push because they know your mythology. They often create the mythology. Immigrants are using drugs to kill people and rape women, white women. So they create the mythology and then they know the buttons to push. This is how con artists work. But not just con artists, our religious tradition, talking about the devil, talking about sin, talking about the nature of the soul. Whether we like it or not, we grew up in a culture, and there's many years of indoctrination and tradition and education within that mythology. And he's saying, hey, look, I've been thrown into fear and distrust like them because it seems to be the same kind of thing I think. It's how it's had a grip of me for a long time. So the game is on the line. These are the big three things we can't distrust. Selves. Don't hate the nature of human beings, of selves or yourself. Reality or mind. Don't think reality is a terrible place and is not knowable. All we can know is the physical pleasures and pains. Don't distrust the logos and accept ignorance or merely belief. These are the big three things we need for our own enlightenment and solving our problems in this life and in the next. What we're here for. So we're seeing, so this goes into a dialectic on side B. If it doesn't exist, we could add, and in this category, something like using the fear and distrust, you can be manipulated. Manipulation. And so we're running out of space up there, but we could say this fear, this hate and fear can be used to manipulate and enslave. The population. Oh, don't ask the big questions about wealth inequality or why billionaires are getting trillions of dollars and we all are getting nothing and starving to death. Because, fear and hate also destroy the planet. But also, these things relate not just to the planet, but to our soul. Our own spiritual development quest. Spiritual development or quest. Okay, so these are the implications. And we're seeing it play out in real time with Socrates saying this. Reminded me that myself had taken this for granted also, this harmony idea. And again, I am in much need of some other logos, just as if from the beginning, right? what happens in the dialectic? Once you go through it, the last step, of course, is how do you relate back to the self? So what can you say about the self? So you start with your idea and then you define it. You take this definition and it becomes there. Then that relates to another. This thing that's been related to then relates to other others. And then these other others or either of them relate back to the subject. So you go back to the beginning. The last thing is back to the beginning. You do the same thing for side B. But then after doing both, you've learned a whole bunch more. You're seeing better. You've leveled up. You've increased your character, your actual character, the actual D&D or Hero's Journey you can play as a human being. The leveling up that can go with you into the next life. Literally. How you nurture the soul affects your next incarnation. And you can actually you can finish the game. You can level up so you go to the higher level in your next incarnation because of the nurturing of your soul. It's the best game on the planet.
You're a wizard, Harry.
It's the only real game on the planet. So after going through this, you go back and you do another one because you've leveled up. So you go back and you start from the beginning. It's a conversation. Every day we have these podcasts, if I can. Every day we have this reflection. Every conversation should be about this. Every bit of art you make should be about this. And can be. And even in your out of body, keep doing it. Socrates is encouraging us to keep going, even out of body. So, by recognizing that from our own practice, from our own efforts, by perfecting our own virtue, we can recognize it, the themes or the aspects of this game in the story itself. Go provide another logos as if from the beginning. Oh, I know that. Because I've been using that. I've been practicing that. That's the virtues. That's the dialectic. That's the logos. So, Plato is considered the great, top 10 or maybe top 5 authors of all time. The Republic, top 5 works of literature. But we're seeing why that's the case. I have a suspicion that people don't really understand why that's the case. They recognize the greatness in it. And of course, the Parmenides is usually overlooked in the Phaedo. But we're seeing why it's the greatest. And we're seeing why because it's an expression or mythologicalization. So, funny word. Of what we're learning in philosophy, in dianoia, in the dialectic. So, go back to the beginning. So I can convince the soul. Oh, is that why we sing these songs? So convince me that the soul does not die along with the body. So, the double team came from Cebes. Phaedo said that everybody listening was all thrown into chaos. And even Socrates listening to the story is thrown into chaos. Please, I'm in need of a logos as if from the beginning to convince me that the soul does not die along with the body. Tell me then, by Zeus, in what way did Socrates pursue the logos? Oh, pursuing the logos. That's an interesting expression. Add that into your dialectic on the logos. Pursuing. He's watched the logos. He's created the space for the... when he asked for the double team, he said, call in the logos. So add this. He's been looking at the logos for himself. So there's one. Add that to your dialectic on the logos. Calling in. And also pursuing the logos. Like that. He's in need. To be convinced me the soul does not die along with the body. So what way did he look and call in and pursue the logos? Interesting. We earlier on in the series, we talked about we don't want to use the physical language to refer to the logos. Taking a part or participating. So we replace participate with share. Pursuing, calling in, looking. These are ways of sharing in the logos. Maybe. If you want, you can throw share into your dialect in the logos. That's one I've been holding as a puzzle and a question myself for a long time. To have a question is to be on a quest. So what way did Socrates pursue the logos, and whether that man was distressed? Was Socrates distressed too? Just as you have obviously become distressed. Was Socrates distressed? There's a question, so we can add this to our list of questions. Or was he not? But quietly came to the rescue of the logos. That's cool. I'm going to highlight that too. And if he rescued it sufficiently or deficiently, there's our metric. So whether or not we should change our mind to become better, to learn, is something to do with the logos being either sufficient or deficient. That's been a puzzle we've been carrying along with us as well. What makes it sufficient? What makes an answer from a politician sufficient or deficient? We don't know. We need to know. Every single reporter should learn this at day one. What makes a sufficient answer to a question? What is sufficient or deficient? If it's deficient, should it change your mind? What is the structure and what's the conclusion? We've seen something necessary and beautiful being elements needed to make it sufficient, but also having an effect on our psyche or our soul, a state of mind. So every single news reporter should learn this. But every person, was your art sufficient? Was your conversation sufficient? Was the song you sung to yourself to free yourself, purify yourself from your false beliefs sufficient or deficient? Tell us everything. And precisely. Here's our word precise again. This has been coming up all through the text. We do this with precision. Phaedo says, I have certainly often been in awe of Socrates, O Escrates, but never more than at that time where he came to our rescue. Hooray! Here's our hero. Here he comes to save the day. I am here. Therefore, on the one hand, he had a response to those puzzles that was equally not at all expected. Interesting. So the responses, this is what we're talking about with art. If we can be confused and watch and call in and trust and pursue the logos, then the answer we get might be not at all expected. Those kinds of insights are the nice ones, all right? But mystified. Wow, wouldn't we want not purple on purple? Maybe make it mystified me. About self. The best kind of mystification. The self. Was this. On the one hand, oh goodness, was pleasant and gentle and admirable way in which he received the logos. This can go in. So we've got what? Watch the logos, call in the logos, pursue the logos, trust the logos, receive the logos. These can all go under the heading of, let's write it down. So the logos. So far for the logos, we could have, maybe this is self, others back to self. How do we relate to the logos? I know, so these are just notes. So we've got this idea of share. Sharing. We look at the logos. We call in the logos. So I'm going to call in the logos. That's why I needed more arguments to give us time to call it in. We just said, pursue. Pursue the logos. What else do we have here? We call in the logos, look at the logos from self, from self. What other words have we seen here? Receive. We can receive the logos. These are notes that we can eventually turn into a dialectic on the logos. It's good to keep these notes. By the way, it can mystify and give us an unexpected and mystified answer about yourself. So these are the consequences, or how we can say, go back to our notes. We have some notes here. How does it relate to, if we do this, how does the logos relate to us? It can unexpected, mystified, response to puzzles. There's our puzzles. Being a philosopher is like being a Sherlock Holmes. Puzzles about self. Wow. What do you say?
Wow. Wow.
So some notes for us, how it relates to us. If we can, especially if we can have these, give us unexpected and mystified responses to puzzles about the self.
Wow.
So, what was the state of mind? Pleasant and gentle. So, a certain state of mind. Admirable. How cleanly he perceived the effect which their logos had then affected us. So, you can see clearly. So, we talked about leveling up. Like if you level up your thief skills in a role-playing game, you'll be able to keenly perceive hidden traps or hidden treasures. He's keenly perceiving the traps here. The way the logos has affected them. Be able to. By the way, I think this is called music. Maybe in the Republic, we need to get into the Republic soon, because before you learn the virtues, you learn gymnastics and music. Music is about perceiving, keenly perceive the states of mind of other people and yourself, which to do with their own rhythm, their own harmony, their own melody or lyrics, and their state of mind that incorporates all of that. He could perceive the effect the logos had on them. He could see their state of mind. It's very receptive. He can see clearly. We talked about the vice of wisdom being to be able to see clearly and then pursue your own individual goals. The people who are called clever but not wise. Or called wise, but actually they're just clever in that sense because they can see clearly. And of course, phronesis is a kind of clear seeing too, but we don't want to be clearly seeing just the physical body. But here he is perceiving the effect of the logo. So there is a clear seeing, or a keen perception of the logos. That's cool. Something to know about our hero here, because it's our hero saving the day. And that consequently, how well he healed us. That's a big one. He healed us. He's healing. We've been talking about art. What makes an art? Using your art, talking in your gallery, communicating a message through the dialectic so you can benefit or heal, purify and perfect. As it were, summoned us from our flight and defeat and turned us around. We can recognize that as one of our self-er terms we've been picking up, the ousia. So if the hyparxis of all of the beings is self-ousia, even in this physical life, you heal people by making you like the ousia, turning you around, summoning you away from your flight. Don't run away. Don't be defeated. And of course, he's been saying, don't run away from philosophy. Don't say you're defeated and nail your soul to your physical pleasures or fears, but trust the Logos, so that we may follow him and together examine the Logos. This is big. This is the channel. This is what we've been doing. So therefore, we can say we ourselves are being healed by ourselves learning to perceive the Logos and its effect on our state of mind and our friends. To be ourselves gentle and pleasant and admirable. To be ourselves confused but trusting, so we can get mystified by unexpected responses to our puzzles. We've been developing puzzles and questions all the way. So we are ourselves doing this. What are we doing? Turning ourselves around. What are we doing? Together examining the Logos. What will that affect us as? Healing us. We are healing our souls together. And so these are the divisions. These are the way in which we're being healed. This is the demonstration, how it's functioning towards us, being healed, and this is the definition. What are we doing? Together examining the Logos, okay? How would you demonstrate this definition of what we're doing? How does it function? It turns us around. Where are the divisions? Mystified, gentle, admirable, seeing the Logos, clearly perceiving. These are the divisions. Can you take all of these divisions, bring them together, unify them together in a certain word that either the most significant one or the one that unifies them together? That synthesis. What does it mean to be functioning in a pleasant, gentle way, mystified, unexpected responses, learn about the self, receive the Logos? What's that? Healing. So what's the final step? Healing. That's the synthesis. And we have to turn that final part of the dialectic around, turn it around and apply it to our definition. So we're doing we're demonstrating what we're defining. That's analysis, synthesis and analysis. Synthesis, taking all the divisions, synthesizing it together, healing. And now applying it to the beginning, that's analysis, synthesis, analysis. So now we have a way of looking at what we defined. Our definition was, what are we doing? Together examining the Logos. What have we just done? A little dialectic on it. What do we end up doing? Seeing it in a new way. We more keenly perceive the Logos now because we just did this little dialectic right now. What do we more keenly perceive? What we're doing, examining the Logos. Why? Because of our division and our demonstration, division, and synthesis gave us a word. Now we can see the definition in a new way. We've leveled up, we've turned around, and we can see more clearly. So what's our new definition of what we're doing? We are together examining the Logos in a way that heals us. We are together examining the Logos in a way that heals us, heals our soul. So we've just learnt something new about what we're doing, about what this channel is. That was not at all expected. I'm mystified by that response. This channel is a healing channel? I didn't expect that at all. That's okay, because I was puzzled and I trusted the Logos. Why did I trust the Logos? Because I just did a dialectic on it. Because I want to share in the Logos. So I looked at the Logos from self. I called in the Logos by asking these questions and doing this dialectic. I pursued it by laying it out in the dialectic form, and I received the benefit of it. And I got an unexpected, mystified response to this puzzle about the self. The self of what? What we're doing together. So we started from, what are we doing together? Actually, let's write it down. We just did it together. Isn't that fun? We're leveling up in real time, folks. So we said self to self. What are we doing? We are examining the Logos together. Let's move it down so we can give it a title. Examining the Logos together. That's the channel. this channel or community together. How does it function? Self, this thing we've just defined, how does it function to another? How does it function? It turns us around. Notice, I am using all of the literal words from the text. I don't need to add what's not there. I don't need to, I bring in my understanding, of course, the level up that I'm at. But this is the beneficial nature of using the logos artfully. Socrates is giving us the material, not the answers. Turns us around. Okay, division now. In what ways does it turn around, or how does that divide up into its other aspects? So this turning around, what are the other aspects, other aspects of this turning around? Just looking at the text at the same time, it can rescue from distress. What else we got here? Unexpected response to puzzles about self. Of course, it's about the self. It's not learning about tree frogs or jelly beans. Mystifies. Makes us pleasant and gentle and admirable. Pleasant, gentle, gentle, admirable. State of mind. Receive the logos. I'm literally just looking at that passage we read and just dividing it up into its parts. Division is the name of this step. IEV, received the logos. Keenly perceived effects. Keenly perceive effects which the logos has affected us. So effects of logos, of the logos. Okay, just so you know, I'm not interpreting, and this is why this podcast involves the text, not just talking about opinions, because it's actually a game. We're playing the game. It's an activity. We're getting the material here. All of the things are just from here. All the highlighter thing turned us around. That's the so definition. Together examining the logos. That's a definition of this channel. Literally, that's what I think we're doing. How does it demonstrate? Turns us around. Interesting. Cool. That's Usia, by the way. Okay. What's the aspects of turning you around? Well, it can rescue us from distress. It can give us unexpected responses. Where's the unexpected? Yeah, here we go. Unexpected responses to puzzles about self. Mystifies us. There's our mystify word here. Pleasant and gentle and admirable state of mind or way. We can receive the logos, and we can keenly perceive the effects of the logos. Okay? Now, all of those parts together, we take those and we go to the next step. Of those divisions, synthesize and analysis. What synthesizes them together? Is there a word that one word that takes them all together? Or is there one aspect that stands out as most significant, or one aspect that's more higher, primary or causal? Well, we've got a good one that unifies. I like that, when it can unify all of those divisions. What do we call that? Healing. This is other, these, unified, back to self. Other, back to self. So what are we doing on this channel? What is this channel? This channel is not just examining logos together, it is also a healing channel. This is a healing channel. That was a very unexpected response. I didn't know this channel was a healing channel. Doesn't feel like it is, but I have to trust. Trust in the logos. Doesn't feel normal. Surely healing is about, I don't know, going to the doctor? Nope. I have to trust the logos. That's courage. Receive the logos. I can't dismiss it. We had to pursue it to gain that. We called it in asking this question. And we watched it. I didn't come up with this. It came from self. I'm watching this. What is it that's watching, by the way? So, very unexpected. So now we've done it. We could say, doing the dialectic is kind of defining the dialectic. But also, we were demonstrating it the whole time. So doing the dialectic, we are defining the dialectic and demonstrating it. Because it was an unexpected response. We are learning about the highest aspect of this channel, the self of this channel, and myself. What am I doing here? Why am I spending my time doing this? It was pleasant, enjoyable. I had a good time. I'm in a fantastic state of mind right now. I'm allowing myself to receive it. I can perceive the effect on the logos, on my state of mind, and the significance from the channel. Next time when somebody says, do you do a podcast? What kind of podcast it is? I don't have to say, we examine the logos together. No, it's a healing channel. It's a healing podcast. There's going to be effects of that. Really? I want to heal myself. I like healing. Healing is part of heart. Interesting. So there's a little dialectic that we just did to more keenly perceive the subject in a new way by turning around at the end back and examining the logos together. Isn't that cool? We can reflect on what we just did using the very terms. It's like midwifery. In midwifery, addressed to problems, you draw out the terms and you organize them together. And that's what Simius and CB said about learning. CB said, hey, the soul must be immortal because you can ask somebody questions that draws out the words that can be synthesized together and analyzed or applied back, turned around to the subject, and they can see the subject in a new way. That's learning. So we just demonstrated for ourselves, so that's the experience, our understanding that we learned something that it must have come from somewhere about this channel and what we're doing together in philosophy. We must have already known this, that philosophy and this kind of channel or this kind of activity functioning is healing. Therefore, our soul must have been alive before to have this knowledge that this is what philosophy does, such that we can, in this physical world, follow the steps of learning, question and answers, using the certain key terms of the self-logos that we can get from texts like the Phaedo, arrange them in the structure of the dialectic to recall, recover, or remember what we once knew. Therefore, we don't have to just trust Socrates saying our soul is immortal because of this theory of learning. We just demonstrated it. So now we have a kind of knowledge and dianoia or understanding of why it's the case in our own direct experience. No need for belief. We had to kind of trust in the logos to begin with and be confused and summon it in and call it in and risk it. Risk being wrong. Risk the double and triple team. Therefore, we ourselves participated in something to show this to be the case. And we walked away leveled up with more keen perception about what we're doing here. So good for us. We are healing.
What?
We're healing. Stone Cold, we're healing. And we're having fun doing it in a pleasant way. So that's pretty cool. It was worth tuning in today, worth doing this thing today. So, our author and Phaedo said, hey, I've never been more in awe. Well, I've never been in awe of this dialectic. Well, yeah, this is pretty nice. Other than coming to our rescue here. So he was able to do it. So somehow he was in this gentle, admirable, pleasant state of mind, and he was able to rescue us and summon us from our flight and defeat and turn us around by together examining the logos and healing us. So he had his own awakening philosophy, community, and channel. Ha 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 ha. So, how did he do this then? We just saw how he did it. Let's see how Socrates did it. We risked it ourselves before having read it. Let's see what he does. How is he going to do that? On that note, on that cliffhanger, and on that bombshell, tune in next time. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has been exciting. I hope you're playing along too. And I hope you tune in next time. All the irregular stuff, join on Twitch if you want to do in real time. Join the Discord if you want. Subscribe to the YouTube. And if you want to, if you think this kind of examining of the logos together that is healing is worth sustaining, feel free to contribute to the Patreon if you want, and if it is within your means. Thank you again for joining me on that cliffhanger. I'll see you next time.